This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome once again here from Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm of course Evan Jensen. This show is live. It's broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We are also live on YouTube right now with the whole show available on demand on our YouTube channel. Today we get the other side. Traders give their views on the Metro Police's cleaning up of the streets. That's seen more than 300 arrested in Johannesburg. We'll get the view from Durban today. We continue our series on the bullying, a culture that is rife in schools around the country. The Africa for Africa Women's Conference in Port Elizabeth draws to a close today. And we'll close the show with a look at 8 Days. That's a film that's shedding the light on human trafficking. It premieres in Johannesburg this Friday night. But first, the day's news from Informal.
Good morning, I'm Informal. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. The woman accused of killing hip-hop star Nkuli Flabba Habedi is set to appear in the Alexandra Magistrates Court this morning. The SAMA award-winning rapper was stabbed to death at his Alexandra home north of Johannesburg yesterday. The 26-year-old woman, believed to be Habedi's girlfriend, was arrested shortly after the fatal incident took place. News of Habedi's death has sent shockwaves throughout the country, with hundreds of people taking to social media sites to post tributes using messages with the hashtag RIP Flabba on sites like Twitter. Firefighters will assess the situation in Stellenbosch this morning after a veld fire broke out in Jonkershoek Valley yesterday. The city of Cape Town also says it will appoint specialists this week to investigate SABC counter mudslides and rockfalls in areas ravaged by the recent fires in the South Peninsula. More than 5,000 hectares of veld and fynbos were destroyed by the fires that broke out last week. The city says regular assessments will be done and traffic will be diverted in affected areas. The wheels are now in motion in Lesotho to install a new coalition into government. Lesotho's King Letsie III has summoned Parliament to a special meeting that will take place today. The sitting signals the start of the process to install a new government following the country's elections last week. The Democratic Congress has signed intent to enter into a coalition with the Lesotho Congress for Democracy and 5 other parties. 3 French sports stars are among 10 casualties of an accident involving 2 helicopters in Argentina. Olympic gold medalist swimmer Camille Maffin, Olympic bronze medalist Alexis Vestine and sailor Florence Arton were confirmed among the dead. This after 2 helicopters collided during the filming of a TV adventure show yesterday afternoon. French President François Hollande has called the sudden death a cause for immense sadness. The Minister in the Presidency responsible for Women Affairs, Susan Shabangu, has delivered her report on the UN Commission on the Status of Women. The Minister said South Africa remained committed to the upliftment and empowerment of women. The Commission is reviewing progress towards gender equality since the conference in Beijing in 1995.
South Africa is committed to the provisions of Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the Beijing Platform for Action, the Millennium Development Goals, and other global, continental and regional instruments on gender equality and the empowerment of women.
And in cricket, we know Ireland earlier set a target of 260 in their World Cup A match against India. We'll keep you updated with the latest scores there. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook. Just search for Newsroom for those latest stories. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And in just a quick score update there, India are making short work of this target of 260. They're 203 for the loss of only 2 wickets after 30 overs, with Virat Kohli still there on 21 not out. So that should be an easy victory for India then. But let's just look at our top story. Yesterday, we spoke about Johannesburg's Clean Sweep, an initiative by the Metro Police which aims to remove street beggars, window washers and informal street vendors out of intersections in order to make the city safer. We were joined by Metro Police spokesperson Edna Mamonyana, who told us more about the operation, claiming that so far they've been successful in the arrest of over 300 of these illegal traders since last month. But how does this cleanup affect the lives of these people just trying to make a living? Today we are joined in Durban by the General Secretary of Ubumbano Traders Alliance, Pearl Olatunde, and John Makwitane from the Masibambisani Traders Organization, better known as MATO, to get their views on the initiative. A very good morning to the both of you, and thank you for joining us. Pearl, if I can start with you. Many vendors choose not to register with municipalities to trade in demarcated areas. Can you explain why this is and what are the problems that you're facing or that you have with this process?
Okay, thank you. I'm Pearl Olatunde, the Secretary of Ubumbano Traders Alliance. So this process is giving us a problem because most of the traders are illegal traders. So when these illegal traders come to trade, the enforcement of Metro Police are harassing them, taking the goods for them. Some of them, they are not getting the goods back, but they have been giving the file to go and pay so that they will get their goods. But they don't get their goods completely as they took. So we are having a problem like that. The second problem we are having is these illegal traders. Some of them, they haven't got permits. And it's very hard for them to get a permit from municipality because municipality got the number of the people that are giving a permit. It's not each and every illegal trader must get a permit. Even though those who got permits, they're still having a problem because when they are not there in their working place, by the time Metro Police are doing their job, they are facing a problem of their goods. They will find their goods taken by the Metro Police without their presence. And we don't know why it's going like this, because the constitution of this South Africa doesn't work like this. We are still having a problem, and we are still engaging the municipality about all the bylaws that they are using in this our South Africa. Thank you.
John, just tell me your story. We talk about harassment from Metro Police and the like. You've had a case that you've won against the Metro Police. Just tell us what happened with you.
Yes. On me, one day I was not in the table for where I trade. And what was happened there, and we get the call. I'm a leader. I was in a meeting. We get the call, some policemen, they went there in my table. They took my stuff. And also I got the permit. I got assistance. I got everything to him. And the assistance went to the tea room to buy something for it. And that's why they came just take the goods. They left the permit behind the table. And also they take all my goods. They take half. Why it make me upset? They take half a stuff. And that time I arrived there, I asked, I read the summons. Once I read the summons, I found the summons is written something wrong. You say I'm selling the plastic bag. And like me, I'm not selling the plastic bag, I'm selling the pairs of shoes. And I try to get the metal for direct those policemen. And I asked him why the summons is like that. I'm not agree with the summons if it's written like this. And we need to find out why they take half the stuff and then they leave another stuff. And the policeman I want to know is the judge or not. Why they take the stuff half.
Thank you.
Asked the Metro.
Thank you. Pearl, if I can come back to you, your complaint or your main complaint over there is that sometimes when your produce is confiscated, you don't get it back. The police, especially here in Johannesburg, they say that most of the trading is illegal because at intersections you're not allowed by law to trade within 5 meters of an intersection. Secondly, they say because of the amount of illegal traders, a lot of criminals strengthens the criminal activity by making out as if they're traders. What do you say to that?
No, I disagree. The reason why I disagree, the illegal traders, they are trying their best to come on the streets and sell something that can make them to survive. Some of them, they are the breadwinners at home. They cannot come out there and buy goods with their money. At the end of the day, they are criminals. They are stealing, they are doing this thing. They are not doing that. There is some criminals which are coming out from their home and do the criminal. The illegal traders, they are coming out to look for something that they can sell and get money so that they will go home with the bread.
But
so
it's your right to earn a living, but you still have to respect the laws and the bylaws, and your right to trade cannot infringe on the rights of other people.
Yes, we do understand about this, the illegal traders. But even though they are illegal traders, they are on the list. Some of them, they are on the list, waiting list, for the municipalities to give them the place for them to sell. Because before you becoming a permanent storeholder, you're starting from the illegal trader, whereby you got no a place or store to sell your goods. But you have to wait for some time. If you are not there on the streets for the municipality to see you, that you are serious on your business, you need this business, they will not give you a place. But if you are there each and every time chasing for you, they will give you a place because they will know that we are getting tired of this illegal trader. This is why some of the legal the traders, they got permits. If you are not there, you are sitting at home, how can you get a permit? How they can know that there's somebody who's hungry looking for food? They cannot give you anything while you are sitting at home. Thank you.
John, if I can come back to you, the judge ruled in your favor against the Metro Police. What did the judge say in the judgment?
In the judgment, the judge, they say that they done is not in a South Africa law. They do their own law. The reason why they say like that, they check the ballots. The ballots was old. That one was using the apartheid ballots. And there is not in a law. The question was, what is the law they use on street traders? Why is not compared with the national law?
Okay.
And yes.
Okay, no, I hear fully what you say. You say they're using the old bylaws, not the new ones, and there needs to be discussion with that. Pearl, if I can ask you in conclusion, just tell us, what would you need or what would you like to happen for the situation to improve?
We need municipality to call up the street vendors and hear what is their problem and try to resolve it. Second thing, we need to reduce these illegal traders. For reducing the illegal traders, we need municipalities to give them the permits. Without giving them the permits, we cannot see the good situation in our South Africa. As we know this, we got lots of young ones, the youth that are finishing school. They cannot go to school for some reasons, so they are starting their own business. The municipality has to think of all those things and try to accommodate them. There's a lot of places around here in Durban or KZN. There's a lot of places whereby these illegal traders, they can give them the places where they can give the permits for the places. So it's very hard to get a permit because if you are illegal, you see the place and nobody is coming and saying go or chasing you. They don't give you unless The problem is starting things.
I thank you for joining us today. That is Pearl Olatunde from the Ubumbano Traders Alliance, and then John Makwitana from the Masi Bambisani Traders Organization, giving the side of illegal traders who work on the streets all over the country. We heard the police's view yesterday when Edna Mamunyane told us their view is that the streets need to be cleaned up because there are too many criminals who act like informal traders but then get involved in hijackings and other kinds of crimes on our streets. Let's take a look at your comments now. Well, yesterday, shocking news came out when the squatter camp rapper Flabba, was murdered. You'll see him performing for the last time this Friday on Strip Down with Squatter Camp. Spread the word. Rest in peace, Flabba. That one from Dragolo. Too Pretty to Care says, if I could see you one more time, I'd let you know that I miss you. I'm missing you if I could see you again. Nice words. Very ugly picture there, my dear. Thank you. Wandile Nkosi Malloy says, truly sad to hear about the abrupt passing of Flabba. Another one drops the mic. Rest in peace, Flabba. I pray for his family, more so for his children. That one from Wandile. R.I.P. Mkuli Flabba says, this is TK Goldfish. It still hurts so bad. I still cannot believe it. Rest in peace, Flabba. And a final comment comes from Nsako. She says, as Dr. Victor and the Rasta Rebels sing, if you want to be happy for the rest of your life, never make a pretty woman your wife. Isn't that right at the heart of the whole thing? To the bone, bad to the bone, that one, as we remember Flabba from Squatter Camp. Now, today's pick of the day comes from Trending Aviation, Argentina. Of course, this is that helicopter crash, a French helicopter crashed. A couple of adventure teams, they crashed into each other in midair, killing 10 people. A few athletes, a couple of adventure athletes, and Olympic hopefuls were killed in that crash. Today, it's a sad day for France. Let's take a look at the front pages from around the world now. What are the other news? In the news, in Europe, the Times. Police are increasingly being called to homes where parents are unable to discipline their own children. A watchdog's report has revealed. Really? Then moving to Israel, the Jerusalem Post. The White House accused Republicans in the Senate of partisan interference in negotiations with Iran over its nuclear program on Monday after 47 caucus members sent a letter to Tehran warning of their intent to undermine any future multilateral agreement. And in Australia, the Daily Telegraph reports a Thai fish factory linked to a tuna brand that left 7 Sydney people with suspected scombroid poisoning is operated by migrant workers 7 days a week. That's news in from down under. Now let's take a look at what's happening here in South Africa. Across our country today, we start in Johannesburg. There on our diary, Alexandra Magistrates Court, where a woman is expected to appear in connection with the death of musician Nkululeko Habedi, known as Flabba. We stay in Johannesburg. Reva Steenkamp's mother, June, will speak about her book called Reva, A Mother's Story. That's at 3:30 this afternoon in the Library Auditorium on the University of Johannesburg's Kingsway campus. Then in the capital, Pretoria, Health Minister Aaron Motsoaledi will speak at a summit on medical negligence. Yesterday, Motsoaledi warned that South Africa is facing a major crisis of doctors because they are reluctant to perform surgeries in fear of medical negligence lawsuits. Wow. Before we go to a break, we had Newsroom Phil. Well, no, this was yesterday's little piece. Let's go straight to a break. We'll be back shortly.
This week we are taking you around the continent, telling you stories about what makes Africa, Africa.
We now head to the Kenyan coast where we meet a man using needles to fight a growing drug culture.
A recent study revealed that there are 850 drug addicts in Diani alone, with over 220 using injectable drugs such as heroin.
In my community, I've seen a lot of these people suffer.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom. Bullying seems to be a culture that is rife in South African schools. A recent survey has shown that 57% of school children claim they've been bullied at school. There's been growing concerns from parents and other educational stakeholders about the continued violence among school pupils. Bullying doesn't only affect learners and teachers, but also families and then the wider community at large. Research has shown that bullying, when left unaddressed, can lead to more serious acts of violence, and in some severe cases, victims are even driven to suicide or murder. Now, to help us decode bullying, we are joined in our studios by Lizette van Heestien, who is an expert in childhood development. A very good morning to you, Lizette. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure, thanks.
Your organisation is called Practica, is that right?
Yes.
The thing that I'm worried about is that I see a trend developing not just in schools but across our society. The bullying that we see in our schools, is this a reflection of the society that we live in?
Well, bullying is really not more prevalent at the moment than it used to be 10, 50 or 100 years ago. It's just better reported. But on the other hand, there are certain factors that do contribute to bullying, like being disconnected, not having open channels of communication, and having a low self-esteem. And all these things do contribute to this trend. And yes, so the answer would be yes. You know, things are escalating at the moment.
Bloomberg released a report last week that says South Africa is the second most stressed society on the planet. That's of all people in the world, we're the second most stressed, only behind Nigeria, and they've got a civil war going on in their country. The kinds of pictures that we see on social media all the time, and I suppose this is what you see all the time, is this a reflection of what's happening in the home, or is it, as you say, what are the underlying factors to this kind of behavior?
Well, basically, a bully is somebody who is hurting. Somebody who is hurting hurts others. And there are also people who don't have a very high emotional EQ. So if you don't have a sensitivity for the feelings of other people, if you have a misconception of what's happening around you, if you take things personally, if something that is a neutral event you take as an attack, then it's the only way that you know how to deal with, that you have to deal with conflict. It makes it difficult to be patient and to be accommodating. So yes, bullying doesn't only have a negative effect on the person who is bullied, but also the bully himself is affected by this. So yes, bullies, in almost 70% of them actually have their first conviction, criminal conviction, before the age of 24. So it's a reality.
What are what are the long-term effects of those that are being bullied? Here we see pictures, those famous from a couple of years ago, of a young boy attacking a school teacher. Kids that are being bullied in school. What is the long-term effects on the victim?
Well, studies that we've done, that was done in America with grade 5 children who were then tracked up to grade 10, showed that not only did they have more emotional problems, but they were also physically not as healthy as other children. They have sleep problems. They have problems with, their self-esteem. In general, they have more stressed lives. So stress leads to bullying, as you rightly said, and then bullying leads to stress. So it's a very negative cycle. So the negative effects are long-term, and the longer the bullying, the period of the bullying, the more intense the effect. So the key to solve the problem is to get everything into the light. Bullying is very much like mold. If you keep it in the dark, it flourishes. If you bring it into the light, it kills it.
What then should parents do? the parents of the victim and then also the parents of the perpetrator of acts of bullying? Because I think that's probably more important.
See, there are actually many people involved in this scenario. It's the bully, the person who is bullied, and the onlookers as well, and all of their parents. So, you know, being open to the signs of bullying, being open to the fact that your child might actually be a bully, and it doesn't reflect that you've done anything wrong or that you haven't created a sanctuary for your child. Or that sometimes it's an onlooker who is now afraid of being bullied and is then also bullying. So, you know, we have to just be open to the fact that these are realities and we have to deal with it and you know, not deny the prevalence of it. So what parents can do is first start off while your child is very little by being a mind-minded parent. Talk to your child about their feelings. What do you think about this? How do you feel about that? What are your, what do you prefer, your preferences? If you're mind-minded, if you talk to your child as if they have feelings and opinions, they experience themselves like that. They also see feelings and opinions in other people. So it's easier for them to realize that something is not acceptable, that somebody else can be hurting. So that's the first thing. Open up that channel of talking about feelings. And then also read to your child. When you read to your child and you talk about the feelings of the characters in the story, they not only realize their own feelings, but they also realize that other people can have feelings and that you as a parent are very open to talking about feelings. So it makes it easier for them to be open. Everything that you can do to help your child to be open and come forward with things that are hurting, that's the solution.
So it comes down to performance in schools, the same thing. Just be involved in your child's education. Be a role player in your child's life.
Yes. And be available. You know, often children are very afraid to even speak about their fears and the things that trouble them. They're more often scared of the response of the parent than they are of being bullied. That is quite an eye-opener. So it's important that everybody in this whole scenario gets support. Not only the children, but also the parents, because they need to know how to handle the situation.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Lizette van Heestien is an expert in childhood development. We're talking about bullying, the scourge that is bullying that seems to be on the increase in schools. Lizette tells us that it's just better reported these days. And in the time of social media, I suppose that is the case with everything around in our society. Now, let's take a look at our tweet of the day. This one comes from Joy Smith. It is by standing up for the rights of girls and women that we truly measure up as men. She quotes Desmond Tutu there. Of course, this is hashtag human trafficking. Now, I can tell you that we'll be dealing with human trafficking after the break. Of course, there's a film that is premiering here in South Africa on Friday. It's called 8 Days, and it's dealing with this emotive issue of human trafficking, and you'll be surprised where it's happening and how it's happening. But now let's take a look at what's on our Facebook page. That happens after the break. Human trafficking. A woman arrested in connection with the murder of hip-hop star Nkululeko Habedi, known as Flabba, is expected to appear in the Alexandra Magistrates Court today. She allegedly stabbed him to death at his home yesterday. Then health authorities may have to double their budgets to deal with mounting medical claims, according to Health Minister Aaron Motsoaledi. He spoke on medical negligence at the Health Summit yesterday. Then you can read more about the upliftment of women. It's discussed by the Minister in the Presidency responsible for Women's Affairs, Susan Shabangu, that was at the delivery of the Commission on the Status of Women at the UN. And Sam Simon, who was a co-creator of the long-running hit series The Simpsons, has died at the age of 59 after battling with colon cancer for nearly 2 years. Simon won 9 Emmy Awards for his work as a writer and executive producer of the comedy that premiered in 1989. You can find all of those stories and a whole lot more on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also visit our website, sabc.co.za/news, for all the latest updates all of the time. Time for us to take a break. Newsroom will be back after this.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. The woman accused of killing hip-hop star Flabba is set to appear in the Alexandra Magistrates Court this morning. The SAMA award-winning rapper was stabbed to death at his Alexandra home north of Johannesburg yesterday. The 26-year-old woman, believed to be Habedi's girlfriend, was arrested shortly after the fatal incident took place. Firefighters will assess the situation in Stellenbosch this morning after a foul fire broke out in Johannesburg Valley yesterday afternoon. The City of Cape Town also says it will appoint specialists this week to investigate steps to encounter mudslides and rockfalls in areas ravaged by the recent fires in the South Peninsula. More than 5,000 hectares of veld and fynbos were destroyed by the fires that broke out last week. 3 French sports stars are among 10 casualties of an accident involving 2 helicopters in Argentina. Olympic gold medalist swimmer Camille Moffa, Olympic bronze medalist Alexis Vestine, and sailor Florence Otto are confirmed among the dead. This after 2 helicopters collided during the filming of a TV adventure show yesterday afternoon. French President François Hollande has called the sudden death a cause for immense sadness. Remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, back to you.
Thanks, Anina. Just watching a little bit of cricket here, and I can tell you, India 243 for the loss of 2 wickets. Now this after 35 overs. They need another 17 runs to win that game. They're going to win it at a canter and finish top of the group. So the one guarantee we then have is we won't be top of Pool B. So South Africa would, in all likelihood, go on and face Sri Lanka, which will be a tough quarter-final match. But anyhow, that's the World Cup. Let's bring it back home. The Africa for Africa Women's Conference in Port Elizabeth draws to a close today. The conference attracted women from all over the globe. It comes at a time when Africa has set stringent targets towards gender equality. Let's cross now to our reporter on the ground, Janine Lee, to give us a little bit more detail. You've got some guests there, I understand, Janine, but just set the scene there for us from the Windy City.
Well, Evan, you got that right. It is windy, but we're here at the Africa for Africa Women's Conference. A number of women from many countries here, all talking about women issues and how to get gender equality on the map. And just a thought, Evan, 20 years ago, the adoption of the Beijing Platform of Action, 189 countries endorsed that, and yet 20 years later today, not one country can stand up and say we've got gender equality. But let's get to my guest, Betsy Ings, entrepreneur, community development specialist. Betsy, if we talk about policy and legislation in South Africa, how does South Africa compare?
South Africa is one of the world leaders, and we're actually at present feature amongst the top 10 as far as legislation and policy is governing the participation of women in the economy.
So where does the problem lie? Because we're actually not seeing it.
Well, I think the problem lies with the fact that we are not implementing against policy and legislation, and really that as women we still have a handout instead of a self-help mentality, and that we actually need to engage from a local level up to our regional government and then to national government. But it's really for women to participate and to make it happen in the economy.
Betsy, can you give us an example of something that's maybe come out about from India?
Yes, I think India is a great example for us as far as starting with women right at the bottom, at the rudimentary level, and then building them up. And as the women are able to actually engage and, financially become self-sustainable, they then move them up to what they call the federal level. And I think that really not only is our policy very ready for it, but we've got great banking structures and financial structures in South Africa that can support the women. So it's really for us as women to mobilize ourselves and to then, be proactive about approaching and implementing the initiatives that we know is happening overseas, and especially in India with great success.
Betsy, thanks very much for that. Let's now go to our other guest, Grania Mackey, all the way from Northern Ireland, International Independent Development Consultant. Wow, that's quite a mouthful. But let's chat a bit about international best practices. Can you share some examples to us that will talk about that?
Yeah, I think the context is very important, and I think it was important what you said about, in reality, internationally, the progression of gender equality has been far too slow. It's 20 years. And, for example, the International Labour Organization put out some figures there that if we go at the rate we're going now, it'd still be another 70 plus years before women reach wage parity with men. And that's an indication that there is a real problem out there, which means the majority, I certainly won't see wage parity, and the majority of women born today won't see wage parity either. So there's a lot, although it's so slow, there's a lot of really good practices going on out there. And the good practices, I think, that are probably most important are those that change gender norms, those that, yes, empower women, but at the same time change the attitudes of men and women to what men and women can and can't do in society, so that the playing field is even.
Does any problem lie within women ourselves? Is it maybe a case of we don't have the self-belief? Where does that play a role?
It does play a role, but it's not necessarily an inner weakness of women. The fact is that girl children and women are told from a very early age, you must get married, you must have children, you must not answer back, you must serve your husband or your family, and these are your priorities. And if you're told that enough throughout your childhood and your life, you will believe it. And we all know that those attitudes form our self-belief. So yes, it is about self-belief, but our self-belief comes from somewhere, and it comes from how we're brought up and how we're told to behave as women and men. So so it is to do with that, but I don't think it's any inherent weakness in women that cause that lack of self-belief. But it certainly is something that needs to be worked on in these kind of programs that Betsy was mentioning. It's about self-empowerment, it's about enabling women to do it for themselves and facilitating their growth to be able to have an active voice in forming and shaping their communities and policies.
Just briefly, Grania, the most important thing you'll take out of the 3 days of this conference, something that's stuck in your head or something new?
I think maybe what Betsy was talking about is these self-empowerment models of empowering women at village level and then eventually linking them up to maybe a municipal or a district level, and then linking them up to a provincial level where they have a voice, have a say, but also their businesses and enterprises where they're generating income grow and get larger. So I would say that's what I brought away, and I think there's a great opportunity for South Africa to link in to India and other countries, maybe BRICS countries, to generate a knowledge base around this. And what will work in South Africa, because we're not India.
Grania, thank you very much. And there you have it from Betsy Ings and Grania Mackey, some insight, some of the things that are coming out of this conference. And as I said, hundreds of women here, but also a number of men speakers. And I said, I think just as important that as we empower women to stand up and believe in themselves, it's very important that men as well have this belief that women can do it and they can exist in a man's world. And in fact, I was speaking to the Premier of the province yesterday, and I said, Premier, aren't you a bit nervous being amongst all these women? And he said to me, you know, Janine, there are so many knowledgeable women here that I've learned so much, and I'm going to take it back and implement it in the province here in the Eastern Cape, and particularly in the rural areas of the province. And that's one of the areas of this conference that has been very topical, how to empower rural women and get them to stand out and see that they get the assistance that they need from banking institutions and other institutions so that they can be self-empowered. Eben?
Janine, thank you very much for that contribution, talking about women's empowerment, for Africa Women's Conference taking place in Port Elizabeth. I thank you once again. Janine Lee coming to you live from Kings Beach, it looks like, there in Port Elizabeth. But next, we look at 8 days.
She has never done this before.
If she hasn't turned up by tomorrow, we'll file the paperwork and we'll start a search.
I'm Heather Hayes. As you know, we've been following the heartbreaking story of missing teenager.
Grab everything! You leave. Because I let you.
No one ever wakes up thinking they'll be kidnapped. This shouldn't happen here. Darkness. Monsters. I can't close my eyes or cover my ears anymore.
I got nothing from the text.
You said it would be okay. What are you doing this? Where are you taking me?
I didn't know what was going to happen to her, honest.
No! Mommy, no! No! Mommy, no!
No, my child.
Help me. We can go together. Every life is worth saving.
Drew is life.
Your last chance.
I'll kill you and your family.
8 days. The film that's shedding light on human trafficking premieres in South Africa this Friday. Inspired by actual events, 8 days tells the story of a 16-year-old Amber Stevens who goes missing and is forced into the world of sex trafficking. Now, although many of us think this is something that could never happen to us or our loved ones, it is a fact that an estimated 2 million persons are trafficked each year. And this is why After Eden Pictures is also partnering with local organizations. But I have a problem with my mic. Let's take a quick break and we'll do the interview right after this.
There are places some are afraid to go. Discussions some are afraid to have.
Leave the house. We're not going to say anything further than this.
But some have the courage to open their eyes, to go to those places, have those discussions.
You're pulling at least 18 hours a day?
Because sometimes perceptions need to be altered.
It's been dubbed the trial of the century. And when you get to a press conference,
They were hoping that that would stem the tide. Stories need to be told in a language everyone can understand.
Once you have religious power, you can abuse people.
but they have got benefits. Free marijuana.
I can only hope that you media, you hear these things.
Everything you might have been afraid to ask, but need to know. SABC Current Affairs.
Zoom into Africa. This is Kenya. The president is Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta. Kenya got independent from the United Kingdom on 12 December 1963. The population is more than 42 million people. One of the major languages spoken is English. Monetary unit is Kenya shilling.
Icons is a unique visual journey of some of South Africa's greatest citizens.
When I wake up in the morning, I've got a challenge.
You succeeded in getting me to do something which is absolutely against my nature.
If I do something, I do something properly.
In celebration to 20 years of democracy, the newly released book 21 Icons offers exclusive access to a remarkable spread of South African legends.
It tells their personal stories and unique portraits that reflect our country and, above all, its people.
That's Kaleidoscope, Sundays, 5:30 p.m. on SABC News.
Come back now.
Let us go to this dollars issue, dollars eventualis and dollars director. What do they actually mean to the ordinary man in the street?
A practical and easy example of dolus eventualis is where two robbers walk into a bank with the intention to rob the bank. They reconcile themselves that should the teller press the panic button, they are going to pull a trigger and kill. So the intention is not to kill, but the intention is basically to rob the bank.
That's Rights and Recourse, Sundays 2 p.m. on SABC News.
In Africa, mobile devices are tools to make payments, browse the internet, and keep governments in check with social media forums.
It's given an average African too much power in their hands.
And tech creativity is solving some of the continent's problems.
Everything is internet driven.
And on Network, we tell you how Africans are using technology and social media in their everyday lives.
Join Siphumelele Zondi on Network every Sunday at 19:30 CAT.
Welcome back. Before we went to a break, we were talking about 8 Days, a film that's shedding light on human trafficking. It premieres here in South Africa this Friday, and I'm joined in studio by Jaco Boysens, who directed this film. Good morning, Jaco, and then Tutu Landungi from Business for Empowerment. Morning to you both. Morning, it's a very emotive issue. Jaco, it's quite a personal story, this. Just tell me why this particular story for you.
Yeah, couple reasons. Yeah, but first, my sister was trafficked, my blood sister, here in South Africa. And then we moved to the United States, and you think you escape something like that when you go to the U.S., and it's even a bigger problem in the U.S., and I married a writer who was asked to write about this topic. So for us, it was pivotal that we make a film, not a documentary, that could show what this really looks like and what's really going on.
Now, the film's premiered in America.
Yeah.
Tell me, what's been the response like? And you've got the premiere here on Friday night.
Response in the United States has been incredible. We work closely with the FBI and Homeland Security. And so the response is amazing on college campuses and schools, and also in the theater by the public. You know, understanding what the crime is and saying, how do we help? What can we do to safeguard our kids?
Titela, you're from Business for Empowerment
Trust.
How you guys decide to get involved in this?
The Business for Empowerment Trust is a non-profit organization under Section 30 of the income tax, and we support women and children, and we're saying business to take a stand. So in endorsing and supporting anti-sex trafficking, it's part of our mandate, and we rally corporate South Africa to stand behind that and say business must take a stand.
Emotive, difficult issues like trafficking, we see at least 30,000 children being trafficked per year. Young men included, trafficked every year in South Africa. How do you view that?
Well, really, it's sad and appalling, but we need to rally up the support in South Africa and say business must take a stand. Let's push this initiative, and it must stop. Let's support women and children as well as young men, because it's part of the crisis at this stage.
No, Jaco, it's made out to be a problem that it's not our problem. It's a very far removed problem. It happens in poor communities and so forth. This is not the case. It could happen to anyone here in South Africa if we look at the numbers, yeah?
Yeah, but today this crime has changed. It's an epidemic. You know, the perpetrators, the profilers are not going to the conventional areas anymore. They're going into public and private schools. This is something you're not immune to. I mean, no matter of your religion or social status or class, they are targeting any kid that looks for attention, and then they're master profilers. So every kid is in danger. And I'm not here to scare people, but I want to accurately educate our community and our moms and our dads out there saying, listen, this is 2015. There's a different a trigger out there, you know, and that could harm our kids, and we need to be aware.
What would you like to see from this partnership going forward?
From this partnership, I would like to see another fund being introduced in terms of anti-sex trafficking, as much as any other CSI and SED contributions that are out there, getting businesses to say we are supporting this and standing behind it. And I'd also like to challenge South Africa out there to nominate their CEO to attend the premiere on the 13th in Cedar Square, and they need to SMS their name, the name of the CEO, to 40512. It's important. Let's support
40512. Your CEO's got to be there. A big business needs to get behind this. It's the only way going to stop us. Tell us about the premiere quickly. The
premiere is going to be a great event. It's Hollywood red carpet. Yeah, and so we're bringing Hollywood to South Africa. We flew in the actors from the United States and some artists from TV shows like The Voice, and they'll be present, mixing with South African who's who. And we never know. We might even see an Eben Janssen there.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get an invite. I'll definitely be there, Yaka, because I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we live in a country where 30,000 children are trafficked and prostituted every year in South Africa. It can happen to anyone, and it's happening as we speak right now. I thank you guys for joining us. 8 Days is the film that's premiering on Friday night. We call on all South Africans to have a look because it can happen to any of our families. You, me, any of those sitting here. Thank you for joining us today, guys.
Thank you.
Now, just a quick cricket update before we go. We're having a look at comments. I can tell you that India's won that game by 8 wickets. Comments, tweets. The most difficult lie I've ever contended with in this life is a story about me, Donald Miller. We're talking about human trafficking, of course. Smuggling a person across a border violates a nation's immigration policy. It's a crime against a person. Big difference, says John Bank. And then Joy Smith talks about prostitution is inherently violence against women. Today we stand against human trafficking, sex slavery. Women's Day, International Women's Day, of course, was this Sunday past at the UN General Assembly. That discussion was had over the last couple of days. That's where we wrap it. Newsroom, broadcast live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Every weekday morning, that is, between 9 and 10 a.m. The show repeats at 2 in the afternoon, rebroadcast then 5 a.m. the following morning. We're also live on YouTube at that time, where the whole show is always available on our YouTube channel on demand. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.